Welcome back to the Quantum Connection podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Vanessa Baldwin, with amazing co-host Heather Crimson. And today we have a fantastic guest who I'm so excited to share with you guys. Her name is Ashley D. Adams, and she is a naturopathic doctor and a homeopath and a breathwork facilitator. So Ashley, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for having me. I'm super excited to be here and chat about all the things.
So why don't you start us off with what made you get into be a naturopathic doctor and homeopath? Like, how did that even come to be?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to share some of my story. So, whenever I share this, I always start out with saying I was never the little girl that's like, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Like that was not anything I wanted to do. It was quite literally like a last minute decision. um, I essentially graduated, and from undergrad, I had a background in like the health sciences, and I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't really know what that looked like. So I just got a really general, degree, bachelor's of science. And then I was dating someone at the time, and it's so funny because literally everything happens for a reason. Like when you look back on your life, like I'm clearly not with this person anymore, but I believe this was a very strong purpose that they were in my path. And he had found the doctorate program that I had completed, and it was a doctorate of naturopathic medicine. And he was like, hey, I think this is like literally exactly what you're looking for. Like this is, you talk about this, but like this is it. Like we've finally been able to put a name to the thing that like you're trying to do. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to go get a doctorate. That just sounds like a lot. Like that was never part of my plan. It never resonated with me, but I was kind of like, fuck it. Like, let's do it. Like, why not? Right. Like, let's see how far I can take myself. I really, at least this part of my life, I like pushing myself to the limits. And I knew it was going to be a challenge. Like intuitively, I knew like this was not going to be an easy task. But I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I did it. And about halfway through the program, I was like, I maybe shouldn't have done this. It just essentially wasn't what I was really looking for. And it appeared to be like what I was looking for. And what I mean is that so the program that I completed, I essentially have my doctorate in naturopathic medicine, and we are trained very similar to medical doctors, like MDs. The way that it differs, though, is our applied sciences, like the second half of our curriculum and training, is very different from a medical doctor. So instead of learning about pharmaceuticals, we're learning about herbs, botanicals, homeopathy, hydrotherapy, diet, nutrition, counseling, things like that. And that was all lovely. And I think my school did an amazing job at teaching us that, but I didn't want to do any of that. Like once I found homeopathy, I'm like, this is all I want to do. This is what I wanted. I just didn't know that that was what I wanted. And I had never heard of homeopathy, never came across it before my medical doctor training in naturopathic medicine. So like I was sharing with you ladies before we hit record, like I don't regret any of my past, any of my training, because it literally is what led me to homeopathy, and then is what led me to have the amazing solo line business that like I've created for myself. But going back to that, yeah, once I found homeopathy, I just dove really deep into it, and like nothing else really existed. I just completed the classes that I needed to complete in order to get my degree. Cause at that point I was already like 3 years in, and I'm like, well, we're not going to turn back now. I only have a year left. So let's just do what I got to do, right? Get the degree, finish everything. I think it depends on, oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
I want to know, like, what was it about homeopathy that was like, this is what I'm looking for? Like, what was it that you were like so excited about?
Yeah, here's where it make it like a little woo woo. I feel like at that point, that was the very first time in my life that I like trusted my intuition. I am very, very intuitive. Like I am very tapped in like now. And I think I always have been my whole life. But like now, the past 2 years, I've been doing a lot of things to really nourish that gift. But looking back, just reflecting on things, right, when we're going on our healing journey, I don't know, I tend to reminisce and like look back and just kind of analyze things. And I was like, I think that was the first time that I actually trusted like an intuitive hit or like an intuitive nudge. So we have 4 classes. The first 2 were like theory of homeopathy, Hahnemann, oh my God, I'm blanking on the book.
Materia Medica?
No.
The Organon? The
Yes,
Organon?
the organon. Thank you. Yeah. We like studied that. And to be honest, that was like kind of boring.
Mhm.
Like, cause it's like in a different language almost. Like it's not, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, because
And
it's written so long ago. It's almost like
exactly.
a different language, but it's just English from back then.
Exactly. And I remember being in class, I'm like, this is kind of boring, but like I understand it. And everyone else was like, what is going on? Like, I don't understand this. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand it? Like, this is what it's saying.
Hmm.
And it was almost just like a second nature to me.
Hmm.
Um, I've had a lot of visions of like my past lives. I have like frequency mentors that I work with, and I have no doubt in my mind that I for sure was a homeopath like before this
Cool.
lifetime. Because
Awesome.
homeopathy just makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it just clicks. It's like this is just the way of life. Like this is the way of health. Like there is no other way, and any other way just like doesn't make sense to me. Not saying that it's wrong, obviously, if you don't subscribe to the homeopathic way of healing, but
Yeah.
it's just like a second nature to me. Like I didn't necessarily have to try very hard on our board exams. There is like a homeopathy section. I don't remember. There's probably like 50 questions and I like ranked the highest. I think I missed like one. And I didn't like necessarily study, so it's just like it's this innateness that is just within me that I like know it. So that was the first time that I like had this nudge where it's like this is it, like this is what you've been looking for, and the case that was presented just blew my mind. It still melts my face off. Like I believe in homeopathy, but I hear these stories and I'm like, whoa. Like I need to be a vessel of this work. Like I literally get goosebumps still talking about it. Like what? It was we the first two classes were theory and then the second two were like case taking, right? So we learned how to take a case and then we learned like the polycrest and like a few other remedies. And my professor at the time, I don't remember what the case was. There's something really debilitating though, like MS or something. And, you know, he walked through the case, told us the remedy he picked, and then went through how the patient responded. And they started like walking, like it was with a cane. But before this, they were like wheelchair bound. And I was just like,
Yeah.
my mind was blown. I'm like, you're telling me you give it this little pellet, right? This tiny little bit of something, and someone can start walking again. And I'm like, okay, like I need to learn more. He was my mentor for a really big part of my career. I essentially like studied with him like during class, after class. I worked at his clinic for some time. I did an internship. I worked for him right after school too, until about 2 years ago, where I decided to just go all in myself and start my own business. But I mean, I completely devoted my whole like life to just like learning homeopathy. So
Mhm.
I mean, I only have, I think, 6 years under my belt, but like I've dove so deep and made it just a primary focus, that I've gained a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge just working with different mentors because it's all I really wanted to do. Where now I'm like, all right, I have a business, like I can do other things, like homeopathy doesn't need to be my life. But it's just so fascinating to me. And it's so interesting how we have this innate ability to heal and like the body just needs to remember. And like homeopathy is quite literally just that. So it still fascinates me. Like I get so passionate even talking about it because it's like this exists. Like why is everyone not utilizing it? Like it's so just like simple to me, right? I understand that's not how everyone sees it, but it's like your life can be so much better, so much juicier, so much more abundant, magnetic. Like if you just knew about this thing. so
Mhm.
so that's how I found homeopathy.
I can feel your passion. I love it. It's so cute. I love it. And I get it because like and homeopathy is kind of like a never-ending study. I feel like because there's so many other
Totally.
remedies, there's so much to learn. Like there's like
Yes.
maybe like 7 or 8 homeopathy material medica books on my bedside because I can literally read them because I'm always just studying it. And I love to learn new remedies and how
Yeah.
that interacts. And then I love to read the case studies. I could read case
Yeah.
studies literally like all day long because it really the cures that come out of homeopathy are pretty incredible. And it's like, wow. I was like, I think the first cure I read was The Impossible Cure. That was a great book. If anybody's
Yeah, that is a good
great
book.
book. And I was like, wow, like that's like it's just so amazing to me. So I love listening and or hearing or reading case studies. So
So
Yeah.
how do you incorporate the like how do you what I'm curious about is you have all the texts and whatnot that you guys are mentioning, and then there's your intuitive side. Like how do you weave those two together?
Yeah. I'll share a little bit about my history, and I think that will kind of bring into that too, kind of allude into it. So When I started, I was trained very classically. I was trained by two older males that are medical doctors that practice homeopathy. So I was taught it from a very like logical, traditional, classical approach. And I think that's beautiful. Like you need to have that skill set, I think, and then you can kind of build from there and kind of make it your own. I always looked at homeopathy as like this art form, right? It's like, how is the homeopath interpreting what you're saying, asking the right questions to get the answers that you're seeking for. Like it's this whole process. It's this whole thing. But I was taught it from them. So like, that's really all I knew. And at their clinic, it was essentially primary care. So we saw anything and everything. And there was something with insurance, like Medicare. Medicare is for older, right? Like 65. Yeah. So they accepted that. So we had a good amount of like elderly people, and it was people that are just not very vital, like just not the most vital beings and on medications and just don't really understand like whole health. And I was serving there and working there for, I think I was there for 4 years. And I was like, I don't want to serve this population. Like someone has to, but like it's not me. So that's when I was like, well, what like lights me up? Like what type of people do I enjoy serving with homeopathy? And that was like another intuitive hit. It's like boom, duh. So backtracking a little bit, I am the oldest of four, and my brother was jab injured. I don't know if we're censoring that word or not here, but yeah, jab injured, like very clear, night and day, completely neurotypical, had the jabs and then completely regressed. And so I grew up just witnessing that and being the oldest of four. My dad wasn't around much. So like I played certain roles for my mom. So I had like almost like a bird's eye view into how a family essentially develops when you have a child with these more complex needs, complex conditions. And I mean, he wasn't walking, he wasn't talking, nothing. And my mom, very determined, like no one was going to tell her that her child was not going to heal. And till this day, like my brother Frank is like pretty neurotypical. I don't like using labels, but I don't know what else to call it. I mean, he has a full-time job. He's fully verbal. Like he could live on his own. He's just like me or you, just like a little awkward when you talk to him. But other than that, like he's literally thriving. And so when the time came, it's like, okay, well, like what community do I want to serve? Like what people do I want to serve? Like that just like hit me like a ton of bricks. Well, like, duh, like this is second nature to you. And I think that population is so underserved, like in the medical field in general, because like the only answers that you're going to get if you're a mom that's like, hey, I think my child like reacted negatively to their jabs. Like you go to your medical doctor and you're completely dismissed.
Oh yeah.
Like you're not considered, right? It's just like, oh, it's no big deal. Your kid will be fine. Or it's like, here's this medication, like here's this pharmaceutical. Yeah. And we know that exactly. Yeah. That's just going to create more problems and more symptoms. So I dove really deep into that community. And I remember, because I would take all those cases that came into the clinic, right? They didn't want it. I wanted it. And the way that I was taught just we weren't getting good results. It wasn't bad results, but like the polycrusts and more commonly used remedies, I feel like they just weren't covering these cases. And so then for me, I'm like, there has to be something more. There has to be someone out there that has experience with these cases. So I think I just like Googled and like podcasts came up and Angelica Lemke came up. I don't know if either one of you have heard of her. She's on the West Coast. She's amazing. I adore her. I think she's making some statements like in the homeopathic community because she does things very differently. And at my core, like I'm for sure a rebel. I love to do things very differently than like everyone else does. I just really enjoy that. I thrive off of that. And she was utilizing homeopathy in a very different way. It was more from an intuitive approach where she doesn't take like a traditional classical approach to taking a case. Like the questions she asks are like very different, almost like very ethereal, metaphysical, like out there, the way that she words things and takes a case. So I just asked her, like, can I just like mentor you? And I had like a paid mentorship with her for a year and her crew. And it was amazing, like completely changed my perspective of how to do homeopathy because they specialize in these more complex cases. So essentially what I do, it feels really good for me because she's very, very intuitive. What feels good for me at this point, I essentially combine the two, and that's how I'm able to get the results that I do. So I combine this more intuitive approach with a very classical, traditional, constitutional, I guess, way of looking at a case. And for me, intuitive, what I do, I literally get like intuitive hits. So that's a part of it. Like I'll be 5 minutes into a case and like remedies will already just flood into like my head. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I just like write them all down. I write down what's coming through. And then I go about it like the classical way, right? Because that is important, like understanding those key symptoms, how the child is uniquely expressing their symptoms. And then at the end, I do something called sensation process, which I learned from her. I do it my own style, but I think Sankaran was like the first one to kind of make that a thing. I don't know if either of you have looked at any of his work or any of his trainings. It's so hard to like put into words, but he definitely essentially through this process called sensation process. It's essentially like a guided meditation visualization, almost getting the client in like a hypnotic type state. Because when you do that, and this is just my perspective, what you're doing is you are understanding someone at their core essence without their limiting beliefs, without the conditioned thoughts that reality is placed upon them. Because I found when I'm chatting with these moms of these complex kids, because a part of the work that I do is mom needs care for herself. So it's either homeopathy or breath work, but I'm still asking questions to understand where we're trying to get right with mom. And not that women aren't honest, but they just aren't aware that this is what they're experiencing and why they're experiencing. Because, and this is just my perspective, not saying this is right or wrong, but I think when you do just a classical, traditional approach with this community, I don't really think you're getting to the core of why they're expressing the symptoms that they are. You're just touching the surface. Because if someone isn't able to tell you, I'm experiencing anger, you're going to overlook all the anger remedies. And here's what I mean. Like I just had a mom in a package and just anger never came up. Like never came up. She wasn't aware of it. I wasn't really picking up on it. And then I did a breathwork session with her. She does homeopathy with me too. And she's like, I think I'm like really angry. And I was like, okay, why do you think that? And then she told me, right, like why. I'm not going to disclose everything just for her confidentiality, but and I'm like, wow. So because I look at things from a perspective of the more intuitive side and I bring the intuition into the breath work as well, people are then able to communicate to me essentially through a lens that they don't have their trauma influencing their answers. Like I said, they don't have those limiting beliefs. They don't have the conditioned beliefs of society. Because I mean, for a lot of women, like anger isn't appropriate, or like you can't be angry because you're a mom. Like you have to be all put together, like for your kids and for your husband and for your family. Like, of course you can't be angry. Of course, like you're not allowed to scream into a pillow, right? So it's all these like conditioned beliefs of how a woman is supposed to be, how a woman is supposed to show up, and like specifically a mom. Like the moms I work with are like the matriarchs of the family. Like they are holding everything together. So yeah, when you're coming at it from that energy, you don't always express everything right away on that first initial consult. So that's why with the sensation process, I can just go a lot deeper than we would by just having like a superficial conversation. Like we're going deep. And I really believe that I believe in reincarnation. So I don't think that the soul ever dies. So the way that I do my approach, it's like accessing your soul. Like, what does your soul want to communicate? Like, what are you still holding on to from past lives that are currently like influencing your current reality? And I don't think a lot of homeopaths do that. Like I said, not that it's good or bad. Like it just is. We all have our unique skill set and our unique style, but I get a lot of clients that are like, oh, homeopathy doesn't work. Like I've tried it this amount of times with this person. And I'm like, you just got to find someone that is willing to speak to your soul, that is willing to like put in the effort and navigate like why you're stuck. Like, why are you not healing? Why are you not responding to remedies? Like, why is your kid not responding to anything? The diet changes, like the hyperbaric chambers, like eliminating gluten and dairy, like the IVs, like, you know, we try to do all these things and it's approaching the child's, I guess, stuckness from a very physical perspective. But in my opinion, like with these more complex cases, the autism, pandas, the uncontrollable rage, tantrums, OCD, anxiety, like it's not a physical thing. Like there is something really, really deeply imbalanced at like the energetic soul level. And I really don't think there's any other modality that can touch that besides homeopathy. It's
Yeah.
literally frequency
I
medicine.
I agree. Homeopathy can touch that. It can touch all the generational trauma, past life
Yep.
trauma, all that. And I'm all with you on the past lives and the reincarnation. I just want to know, like, I'm like, how do you get into the soul? Like, I want to know that. Like, how are you doing that? Like, I don't know if you can say it or like that's that's cool to me. Cause it's like, I agree with you because especially when you work with kids like that who are on spectrum or things like that, it's hard to gauge it just from the symptoms because it's hard to get the symptoms from them, right? And just really know
Correct.
what's actually going on internally because they're not able to communicate. So that's like, how are you getting into that? Can you go a little deeper into that? Or if
I
you can?
can. Yeah, no, I totally can. So that is ultimately why I decided to explore becoming a breathwork facilitator.
Hmm.
Before I did it, it wasn't really in my field of awareness. This is why I just think life's cool. Like literally everything happens for a reason. There's like no coincidences. Really good friend of mine was like, "Hey, I'm doing this class. Do you want to do it?" I'm like, "Sure, yeah, why not?" And I did it and I was like mind blown again. Like I for sure like for lack of better term, like just left my body. I explored the multiverse. Like I was this powerful ancient being, like fully embodied, like almost like this ancient, like Egyptian, like queen archetype like energy. And that was the first time I really experienced something like that. And I'm like, oh wow, I did that like without drugs. And no mushrooms in my system. Like, wow, like I went there without something external. And I'm like, this is deep. Like, this is almost as amazing to me as homeopathy. Because I
Mm.
essentially just got high on my own supply. Like, I just got high on my own neurochemicals and like my own breath. So after that, I remember I like journaled out like a lot of things and I'm like, whoa, like I spent a lot of time reflecting, like, why do I do the things that I do? Like
Mm.
why do we navigate this reality the way that we do? I ask a lot of like whys because for me, like I want to understand who I am at my soul's core essence. And if you're not asking why, I don't know that you're going to get there, but that's besides the point. Conversation for another time. So I like journaled everything out and I was like, this is really profound. Like this is really, really deep stuff that I just uncovered about myself that if I was just having coffee with someone in a coffee shop, I wouldn't have said any of this. So
Mm.
that's when it just like hit me. It's like, all right, so the way that I have my packages set up, and not everyone wants to do this, which is fine, but the clients that do commit to the way that I've created a package, like always, there's always deep transformation that happens. So how I have it is it's homeopathy for the child and breathwork for the mom, or mom can get homeopathy and breathwork for herself. But I essentially have mom do a breathwork session. After that breathwork session, then we have a little session and she's explaining more about like what she experienced in that session. And we usually kind of tailor it to tapping into your innate wisdom, your intuition, and then connecting to your child's energy. So it's essentially a whole like meditation visualization that I guide you in. And then you are just verbalizing what you're seeing, right?
Mm.
Like what you're tapping into, what you're accessing. And for me, like I create a really, really safe energetic space to do that. Cause for some people, this is their first time that they're exploring something more, woo woo, for like lack of better terms. So safety is a big piece why a lot of people don't explore anything beyond this physical reality because we're
Yes.
very conditioned to be afraid of what we don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, but like if you are the multiverse, if you are the cosmos, like you are everything just in physical form here, like why are we afraid to just explore ourselves? Because that's literally all you're doing with breath work. That's literally all you're doing with homeopathy. Like you're just exploring the depths of yourself.
Well,
Mm.
that's also in the quantum biology realm. It's more about the physicality of it. But there's
Yeah.
people who are like Carrie Bennett. She just posted about a book that she commented on about heaven. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get that book. And not scalar frequencies. I can't remember the name of them, but this is the kind of thing you're talking about. So my hope is that with quantum biology, there's going to be a movement towards, well, if we're all just vibrating particles that are love, like let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Let's not just talk about, how to get rid of some problem in your body.
Oh my gosh, yes. I literally have full body goosebumps. Like that is a part of my mission. I declared it like a few months ago. It's like, how can we just change the collective conversation? Like we're so conditioned to just live in this frequency of fear.
Yes.
You
Mm.
can't do anything. You can't live your life's purpose. You can't access everything that your soul's desiring when you live in this fear frequency. And you honestly, like, this is just what I've witnessed. Like, you can't even communicate what's going on in your body, in your child's body, when you're just fearful of exploring it.
Yeah, you're
So,
living in a constant state of reactivity and
yep.
hyperarousal and all hypervigilance and all that, which is compromising your body's ability to heal itself to begin with. So it all connects that way.
Oh, you nailed it, Heather. Yeah, I really try to educate like my clients with that. And, it's just not received sometimes. And that's okay. People will get there when they get there. But that's a big part of the work that I do really with moms is creating that safety in your body. Cause like it's just you, like it's just you in this physical meat suit, right? And a lot of us, once again, have been so conditioned to like not accept all parts of us because we've been conditioned to think that this is right or this is wrong. Like it's wrong that I chose to get my child, jabbed and now they have all these problems. And then when you label it as such, you have this immense guilt that is just like weighing you down. And like the frequency of guilt is so heavy. You have this shame, you have resentment. Like a lot of the women are like angry at their husband, right? Because husband didn't do XYZ. It's like this whole slew of thing that happens, but it's just because we tell ourselves these stories that like it's bad. And like we're talking about the quantum stuff, like time is just an illusion. Like the past literally doesn't exist. So like
Yep.
allowing these like past decisions to dictate your reality and you're not going to get anywhere.
Yep.
I mean to laugh, but it's funny for me because like I don't know, once you know what you know, like you can't unknow it. Right. So then it just becomes your reality. But getting back to the point you initially asked me, how do I do what I do? It's really just a conversation I'm having, but I am getting people into, like I said, more of a hypnotic like brainwave and really enforcing that frequency, right? Like that's the first thing that I do with safety. So it's enforcing that safety frequency. Like it's safe for you to be here, safe for you to breathe into your body. Like repeat after me, right? It's like as simple as that. And like I said, I'm very intuitive. So what I try to do is just almost like create like an energetic bubble, right? So nothing else is coming in, infiltrating your thoughts. Nothing is clinging on to you. No entities, no anything, like just really keeping it really safe and pure. Then just helping mom access her intuition and create those visualizations. And then we bring in the child's energy. Like it's just a little process. Like, okay, invite your child's energy in now. Like, what does that feel like in your body? Like, what are you seeing? Is there a shape? Is there a color? Like just exploring beyond what the physical mind wants to describe the scenario as. And man, some moms like really are tapped in and can like go places. Like just an example, I had one mom that she was communicating and it was almost like she was talking about what we know as a solar system, the galaxies, the stars, the cosmos. And her child was like this little particle. And then he bursted into this big particle. And then there was like this golden hue, this light. So then I take that, whatever mom says, I then take and I essentially kind of cross-reference it with a remedy that I would have decided on like a more classical traditional approach. So that's what I kind of do. I kind of like cross-reference the two.
That's
And
really fucking badass.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm so interested.
Just gotta say that, like, hello, wow. Can I sign up?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really cool too. And it gets even cooler.
Ashley, that like my history is in mental health, and then I did a lot of work on attachment. I did a stint with early infant mental health, and it's so tragic how we pathologize the child and the parents want to bring them in and plop them down. And it's just like, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
It wants to step back and divest themselves of their impact on the child. And I'm not trying to say that parents don't mean well. I think they just don't know what to do. But our mental health system does not help in that regard. But there are some very good therapists who will try to, they want to look at the system and whatnot. But what you're doing, like, that's a whole nother level here.
You're going so deep. And now I have a question for you. Like if a parent wants to work, say for, I just want to know if this comes across ever, like if it ever happens. It's like, I just want you to work with the kid. I don't want to do it. Right. Like, I don't want to be involved. Like, I don't want to have a session. You can't, right? Because it has to be like the connection between them and the child is a part of it. Right.
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up. Like that's currently in my quantum field of how I want to navigate that. Up until this point, I'm like, sure, but like I've told them too, like you're not going to get the best results.
Right.
And like,
the results will be better if you work on mom and dad or whoever the caregiver is also.
Yes, I have a few clients now that like they didn't want to commit, like moms didn't want to commit. And I'm like, okay, but like this is probably what's going to happen, right? And then that happens. We don't really get anywhere. And it's like, politely, like I told you so. So I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like that's confirmation for me because I'm like, dual, do I just deny then working with them? Because like it's just it doesn't feel in alignment for how I want to serve and show up as like a
That's your
facilitator of
standard.
healing.
That's your
Yeah.
standard, and
Mhm.
you know the truth, right?
Yeah.
And so that also sends a message to them that it's that important, it's that serious, and you know what you're doing. You're the expert or whatever you want to call yourself.
Sure.
Not going to bend out of your framework and your boundaries. So
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's confirmation for me. That's all I needed.
Yeah. And you want to
Thank
do the
you.
most effective job. And these are complex, you're working with a lot of complex, illnesses, and this is it.
Yeah.
It's complex. It needs a lot. It's not just a simple here, take one remedy and move on with your life. Like this is going to be, and
Correct.
that's another conversation we have to have with clients too. Like
Sure.
this is going to take time. Like, there's that too, like to undo. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
whatever the parents avoiding is an essential part of what could be the issue going on
yes.
in their
Correct.
energetic connection.
Correct. Yeah, I try to do that as delicately and gently as I can because no one likes to hear like, well, you're part of the problem.
Yeah, that's
But-
difficult to do
But
with.
maybe not even think about it as part of the problem. It's just it's all relationship too. Like I mean, I
Really?
know Heather would agree with that. Like how you're interacting with your children and the relationships, and it's miasmatic things that we have. Like it's so many things. Like so it's not anybody's fault. It's not that you're the
No,
problem. Like
no.
it's just what needs to occur in order for healing to happen, you know?
Yeah, I like that. It is. It's just, it's a relationship. Like you, symbiotic, right? You feel them, they feel you, like they are a part of you, you are a part of them.
There's a soul contract too that parents, if they can't get there, it's a lot harder to access all that.
Read my mind. I was just gonna bring that up. I mean, I really think that like we choose our parents before
Yes.
we decide to come in and incarnate here. Like I've literally had visions of that so clear, it's wild. I just had a client the other day though, and he's very connected with his mom to the point where mom is like, he almost treats me like I'm his like girlfriend or like wife or something. Like he's so connected to me. He needs to know where I go all the time, always texting me, right? Like it's not healthy at this point. Like I love my kid, but I want the relationship to be he's my kid, right? It's almost like he always needs to keep tabs on me. It's almost like this judgment from me. So we had the consult and yeah, we explored like what's there in a past life. So when I do that sensation process, like I get hits sometimes. So after mom is connected, does what she has to, then I'll share with her like what I intuit and download. And I mean, it's very clear, even just like logically hearing them talk, but like I literally had visions of them like they were in a romantic relationship. Like they existed in really tight relationships before this current lifetime.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, well, then like that opens up a door to like so many other remedies. Cause it's like, at least the way I see it, it's like, why is her child carrying that past life energy with him? Right. Like, how is it serving in this current reality? Because it's not really serving mom. It's not serving him. He almost has like not, I mean, there are some OCD symptoms, but it's like this constant need to like check in
Reactive
with mom.
attachment. Reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like the like a carcinosin type like codependency, right? Like needs are there. So then yeah, when I have like intuitive downloads or visions or like hits, I call them, and then I hear what mom has to say when we do the sensation. It just opens me up to remedies that I wouldn't have even considered unless we had these conversations. So for me, it just allows me to go a lot deeper. And then from there, it like gets even cooler. So what I also do is
There's more.
there's more. Like it gets so cool. And I love your guys' energy because I'm feeling off of it. Like I think what I do is it's really fucking cool. Um, so in a breathwork session, I describe it as like a very somatic experience. Like if you surrender to it, you totally can explore the cosmos, whatever we're calling it, right? You're exploring something that's bigger than you. We're tapping into the most highest expression of like your soul, right? Like the part of you that's already done it, already gamed the game, already knows how to heal your child, like already knows how to show up in a relationship. Like you already know how to do all these things. It's just essentially remembering how to do it. With breathwork, we do that though. And what I really love doing, for me, what I've noticed, and this is just purely what I'm doing in my practice, giving a no-sode before they have the breathwork experience or giving a gemstone before they have the breathwork experience. And that just like, wow, that rocks your socks. Like it's
Like the better, the more, this is going to sound awful for the people who like the plant medicine. It's a new and improved version of
Yeah.
I love it. Without
Well,
all the awful side effects of whatever they do, puking, and I don't even know.
so
I'm
I
curious, like, how do you decide though? Because that's before the session. So how do you decide which one to give if it's
yeah. So I do this if mom's committing to the package where she's getting homeopathy and breath work for herself. So like we'll do her homeopathic intake first and like get an understanding of like what core remedy we're going to start her with. And then I just like take notes on the side. Like this no sode would resonate really well, or this gemstone would resonate really well. I mean, really, I think you can get there with any remedy that like resonates like to the best of its ability, but it's almost like they complement each other really, really well because at least my experience, like the no-sodes can almost peel back the layers at a lot quicker speed. That's what I've noticed, right? It kind of like takes you past all the layers really quickly. Where in my experience, if you're just doing like sulfur or a polycrest, it takes a little bit longer, just with the community I work with. So that's what I've noticed. And on my own, like I've explored homeopathic psilocybin, I've explored homeopathic DMT. So
How
yeah.
do you even get those things?
So the woman that I work with or did work with on the West Coast, you can, if you'd like, I can send you how to access her dispensary.
we would like that.
Yeah, I can email that.
So we can
Yeah.
send out.
Yeah, I can share that with you. Don't share it with clients. That's strictly just for you guys.
Yes.
Because yeah, it's like a practitioner, like client based dispensary. But yeah, she has access to a lot of really cool stuff. So I haven't done that with clients. I just experiment with myself like here and there. But yeah, it's like, well, why not? Like it's just the frequency of the thing. So like if it can allow us
Than actually taking the actual substance. I mean, for all of the reasons we know, right?
Right.
correct.
Because like we
Correct.
said, it's not the crude form. Let people know that it's not a crude form. It's the frequency or the energy of that substance. So that's the big difference between what we're talking about.
Exactly. And I think it also depends too, like where you're at on your healing journey. Cause I've explored like actual psilocybin, like mushrooms, and I personally love them, but I'm at a point where I feel like I've peeled back a lot of the layers of myself that I wasn't willing to face. And so now I'm at a point where like, I don't feel like I need to utilize them anymore. Like I simply just do breath work to get me to those places and get me there. So I think it kind of depends where you're at, but I personally, like, I never vomited. I never had anything bad happen from exploring mushrooms, but I know people have very, very horrible, horrific.
Well, that's what I've
stories.
heard about from many
Yeah.
clients who do the ayahuasca.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard a lot of horror stories. So it's like, well, you want the spiritual growth and expansion, but like you're willing to be like vomiting and like pooping yourself. Like that just like doesn't make sense. But I think you can get to the place you're wanting to get without the hallucinogenics. Like I really, really do believe that. And if you asked me that a few years ago, I don't know if I would have answered the same, but I've just had such profound experiences like with breath work and like with homeopathy and then like definitely combining the two that I'm like, I don't need like the actual physical, substance anymore. It's like I can get myself there. And I think if you're held in a space too, like with a really grounded facilitator or healer that like you resonate with and like wants to facilitate the healing in a way that feels in alignment for you, I think you can go even deeper because
The
you
safety
feel that.
has to be in this container and the safety.
Yeah,
goes for that.
exactly. Yeah, safety is such a huge piece, I think, for anyone, but women in general. But yeah, I don't know what question you asked, but that's where we're at with that.
What percentage actually of your practice is with kids? And then what percentage is with people who were doing more what I would call spiritual work this way?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a really good question. I'd say right now it's probably like 60% kids with homeopathy and then maybe 40 that are on a more spiritual path. And they may not know it, but like they're headed that way, or they're at least open to it. Cause I'd say a lot of it's interesting too, the dads that I facilitate for are actually like, they already get it. they already understand that they're these like multi-dimensional beings, and like they want to attract in like everything that their soul desires. Like they're already there. Where I'm noticing the moms, it's a lot more lack of better term, like convincing.
Like
What is
rigidity.
your intuitive hunch about why that is so?
I I always say I think, but it's like, no, actually, you know. I know that. I mean, just from witnessing my own mom, like she gave her power away, like over and
Mm.
over and over and over again. I mean, she obviously still had some of her power because when it came to quote unquote healing her child, like no one was going to tell her that she's not going to. Right. Even till this day, she's still like, how can we get Frank even better? I'm like, Mom, he's walking and talking, like he's doing great. But it's like she's so determined. But I think a lot of women give away their power to your medical doctor.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens, right? Your child reacts negatively to a jab or an antibiotic or something. And then you're like, damn, I should have known better. Like, I should have trusted my gut instinct.
Yep.
And then that's almost like banked evidence that like you don't trust yourself because it's like you made this poor decision. And then what happens, you're resonating in that frequency and you tend to attract in more scenarios that then reinforce that for you. It reinforces that like you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
You don't trust yourself. And when you do that, you become so disconnected from your body. Like I see the soul and the body is different. And I think when they're in alignment, for me, like that's when true health happens, like when you can live in alignment with the two. And when you continue to make those decisions, like you almost disconnect, right? And when you disconnect, like you're not in your power, you're not connected to your intuition, you're very uncertain about how you show up as a mom, you're uncertain on what choices to make, like how to show up for your husband, like you have no confidence. And so that's the woman that I usually end up working with.
Well, back
And
to that fear place again.
it always comes back to that. It really does, because it's such a strong frequency. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if I want to go down this route, but I think a lot of this reality is created to have people live in fear, and specifically women. Like I think women compared to men, like we are very different, and that's so beautiful. Like I believe that it has to be like that for a reason. Like we complement each other.
Balance. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And another thing, like in this reality, like women have been conditioned that they need to like work as hard as a man. You need to show up as a man. You need to go to work and have a baby and go home and cook and clean and do all these things for your family. And like, if you want to do that, that's beautiful. Like, if that's your conscious choice, that's how your soul wants to show up. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I see there's issues when you allow that conditioned belief to then run your reality. Because like for me, I showed up as a very masculine like woman. Like I don't need a man. I can go to school and I can do all these things. Cause like that's how my mom showed up. Cause that's how she had to. Like she had to show up that way because my dad wasn't present. And then once I started doing my own inner work and like access this beautiful, divine, like feminine goddess, like life just got so much better. So going back, I think a lot of women like live out of alignment with how they actually want to show up. And they don't even know that that's how they want to show up because they're not even aware that the way that they're showing up is based off of how someone else has conditioned them to show up.
Yeah, but homeopathy can bring you back to that alignment. I
Totally.
really feel that. Like you're like, it brings you back to your true self, who you're meant to be, and like makes you open your eyes and be like, this is not what I want. Like, so, or this is not how I want to show up in the world. So, I mean, that's what's amazing about how deep acting that medicine can be, you know?
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't deny it. I really don't. I've noticed too, like the women that I work with, right? We all want the quick response. We all want the transformation overnight, and that's not how it works. But that's another reason why I incorporated in breathwork, even from just like a business perspective. Like you can feel great, like literally after one session. And then if we're pairing that with a really deep acting remedy, I just think you can almost transcend time and you can get quicker shifts a lot faster. But that's obviously not in alignment for everyone. Like some people's bodies don't want to do that. And like, if you try to push yourself and the body doesn't want to do that. So once again, just creating that safety, like listening to your body, how your body wants to navigate the experience, the homeopathic experience or the breathwork experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm so super curious. So when you do all this work now, do you give one remedy or do you give more than one? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. I take it case by case because people do ask me that question a lot. Like some case, it just one is fine and they do great. And we just keep increasing the potency and things keep shifting. But I will say majority of the cases I work with, I tend to do more than one. I usually don't do more than three because that just gets too sticky. And it's too hard for mom to like know when to dose, especially if she's like new to homeopathy. I tend to dose a little bit more aggressively too. So usually what I do, it's like one core remedy that resonates with the totality of symptoms the best. And then it's usually not always, but like a no sode or a SAR code that I'll kind of add in. Excuse me. I call it like a complementary remedy. And it's maybe just once or twice a week, or just maybe once and just wait and see. But it's really case by case. So I don't have like a protocol where it's like, this is how it is for everyone. It's still very individualized, but because these cases are so multi-layered, there's so much suppression that has to be worked through that I usually do end up doing more than one at a time. It's not getting all three once a day, every day, but it's usually ends up being more because there's just so much that has to be peeled back, essentially. There's just so much that goes into these cases.
Do you ever use
no,
the flower essence remedies?
I haven't. I'm not opposed to it. I usually just tell people to go see Sophia because that's like her jam. Yeah, that's what she's really good at. So if a client brings it up, I'll just refer. Like I'm really good at what I do. I don't try to be like, oh yeah, let's do this. And like I don't know anything about it. So I just tell people like go see this person. It's what they do. Yeah.
Now, are you using higher potencies or are you sticking more with low potencies?
Really case dependent. So what I do, I will muscle test on my end and like I really utilize my pendulum a lot. I love this thing. And once again, it's kind of like an intuitive hit. It's like, all right, is this person needing higher or lower? Sometimes mom will just communicate like, hey, we give them 30 Cs and they resonate really well. Like, okay, well, why would I give you like a 10M if we know 30 Cs are going to create change? So it's what mom communicates. And if it's their first time doing homeopathy, that's when I'll kind of like tap in. But I'll usually start with a 30 or a 200. I usually don't hit them with like a 10M. Even if like intuitively it's like, no, they need something higher because I mean, you all know worst case scenario, you have this huge healing crisis that happens and they aggravate and like people don't understand that that could actually be a really beautiful response. So I'd rather go like slow and easy and steady until the mom has an understanding of how to navigate remedy reactions. But so I usually start with a 30 or a 200 and then kind of go up from there. What I have noticed though, and I've talked with other homeopaths and it almost like pisses them off when I say this, but I'm just being me. So it is what it is. I really, really think that the higher frequency you are as like a soul, almost like the more embodied you are, the more bright you are, like the more expansive you are, I really think you do need higher potencies.
I think that's really interesting. I think that doesn't piss me off at all. I think it's cool.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
the old school, like classical homeopaths that aren't really open minded to anything that
It
exists
makes
outside.
sense though. It's like they're already vibrating or the resonance is so high. You want something that matches that, right?
That was my thought because when I first tried homeopathy on myself, I started with like 30 and twos and like literally did nothing. And I'm like, darn, like, what do you mean? Like, I really want this to work. Like, come on. And then I don't know, it was like in the clinic that we were working in, and they told me to get a 1M, but like I actually got a 10M instead. I completely one dose, like knocked out my chronic yeast infections.
Yeah.
Damn.
People at 10M like knocked it out, done. Like have not experienced one since, and it's been like 6 years. So I was like, oh, well, like maybe I just need higher potencies. And like I do. Like I've been up to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the Finky dilutions.
I've heard of it, but I've never.
Yeah. So at the office I worked at, that's what they did. So essentially when you get up to write DM, CM, MM, like what's after MM? I know there are LMs, but at the office I worked at, they weren't utilizing that. So what they did, they took the MM potency, they crushed up the pellets, put in a little bit of alcohol, like shook it up, diluted it, and then you let water run through it for like an hour. So then the potency is MM plus 1 hour.
Ooh, interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've been experiencing, or using LMs more, and I found that to be pretty pretty potent on myself because I'm taking the remedy I'm taking now is a remedy I've taken in a 1M and a 10M. And
Yeah.
I'm taking it in an LM, and I'm like, I found this to be the best frequency for me so far. And I do think it's also because I'm just very sensitive also. So maybe
Sure.
like too, but it's just so interesting. And you really do have to like play with it and see, you know, what potency really responds with people. But if you can intuitively download it, that's cool too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always correct. That's why I have my tools like muscle testing and like a
Yeah.
pendulum. It's almost too like I've seen myself and some of my clients, like the higher potencies are almost more gentle.
Mm,
It matches their frequency better. Whereas like we'll just say I had one client and he like aggravated so bad with like a 200. And so of course mom was really scared to try like a 10M, but I'm like, no, like this just resonates really well. Like you got to trust me, just one dose once and then we'll go from there, right? Just once, that's it. Like waiting and watching and seeing. And he responded so beautifully. It was like ADHD, so like bouncing off the walls, right? But he was so chill, so calm, so relaxed. I think it was like butterfly. We ended up doing like butterfly 10M, and he responds so, so beautifully and hasn't really need any more doses since, or at least not as aggressively.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's almost like if you can really hit the nail with matching that resonance, like I think it can almost be more gentler than like other potencies because the frequency just doesn't match. So if you can match it to the best of your ability, like it's almost going to be more gentle. Obviously,
Mm.
things depend, like the amount of suppression that they've experienced and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
because we do have to go through some of those aggravations. You know, we see that. I know you see that, those healing crises, because everything is so suppressed, unfortunately. And we've got to,
yeah,
they got to move through things. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge in the moment.
yeah, it's the nature of the beast. Like that's what I try to tell people. And obviously, we don't ever want to experience those undesirable experiences. And because we don't know why it's happening. So then we're fearful of it. And then it's like, oh my God, make this thing stop. But like I personally, and I want to start sharing this more just so people get it and like understand, I have had the wildest healing crises where like if I was functioning under the conditioning of this reality, like I would have taken my ass to the ER more than once.
Mm.
I definitely would have. But I did not. I did not. And I sat there and I just breathed and I'm like, it's going to pass. Like,
Yes, because it's
I
an
think,
aggravation. It's not going to stay, right? It's going to go away. Yeah.
I think also
Maybe
because
all
I'm,
the past life stuff is moving through you as well, probably. It's not even just from this,
Yes.
iteration.
Yeah.
oh my God, yes, 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 yes. It is so wild, the stuff that my physical body has experienced. Like, there's no explanation for why I've experienced it, like in this reality, like, no explanation. Like, lab tests are perfect. Like, there's nothing like medically like wrong if we're looking at it from just like functional tests. But like, the symptoms I've had are wild, and it's been wild since I've started my own business, which there's no coincidence, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I should have taken myself to the ER more than once. And I was going to say too, I think a part of it is because I am really connected to my body. So it's like, yeah, this is scary, but my body's like, girl, is good. Like, just give us a few hours. It's going to pass. It's fine. Where I think a lot of people aren't connected that way. And when you're not connected, it's like you're just searching for anyone to give you any type of relief. And you're once again giving up your power because you don't already have the power. And the little bit you do have, you're like, here, take it, help me. Right. And we know that long term it doesn't help, but we want relief. Like we're so afraid of the pain. We're so afraid of the unknown, where it's like, yeah, if you can just take really deep acting remedies, like move through all of that suppressed shit that is continuing to percolate in your body and build up, your life's just going to be so much better. Your health's going to be so much better, but like we avoid it.
Yeah. But I'm sure that having that as a breathworks facilitator, using that in those, you know, healing crisis moments is probably like so helpful.
Oh yeah. I mean, 100%. It sounds so simple, just like breathing. So like the breath work that I facilitate, it's like a 3-part breath and like it's a whole thing, right? Facilitator, music, like it's a whole thing. But like outside of that, like no one's really breathing appropriately, and that's just how it is. But like if you can just sit still for like 10 minutes a day and just like deeply expand your lungs and deeply contract your lungs, like that is so therapeutic in itself. Like it really, really is. And it's just, I've always had this innate belief, and then just, going through the schooling and the people that have been in my life just really reinforce it. But I kind of grew up with this lifestyle too, I think, because everything with my brother, my mom was more natural minded, but I've always had this core belief that like the body is like never going to self-destruct.
Mm.
Like the body's literally always working for you.
Yes, that's
Like
such a huge mindset shift for people, is that
it is.
start the healing, the body's working for you, not against you. That I can want to say it every podcast episode, because it's just like, that's people like
Yeah,
they want to push against it. They always want to push against it and be,
always.
and
That's
it's
like
like,
a
no, it's
programming.
actually, it's helping you. It's a healing. It's a healing. Any symptom is always a healing. So just if we can shift that perspective, then we would never need pharmaceuticals.
Yep, I think you nailed it right there. Like, exactly. It's because we allow that conditioned belief to occupy our mind that then creates our reality. So if you're like, yeah, my body's broken, or this pathogen is going to cause this disease, like, oh, I need to wash my hands, I need to mask up, I need to avoid people. Like I just don't understand why you think you would have a desirable reality. Like when you're living life like that, like that is not, it's just not innate to how our body wants to have this existence.
Or
Yeah.
even like the functional medicine, like it's the mold, it's the parasites, it's this,
Yeah.
it's like all of that. And then I mean, you don't know my history, but I had the whole health crisis, of course, and I went to functional
Yeah.
medicine. And I always felt like all that did was bring me more fear. Oh, you can't
Yep.
eat anything. You have every kind of disease. Like it was just all fear frequency that just
Yep.
made and amplified things to such a more worse state. So it was just, yeah, we have to, that's what I love about homeopathy. It's just totally the opposite of it all, including functional medicine.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I've noticed this too. Like, I think it kind of depends what frequency your soul is at, like what your intention is, like why you're here. Because I mean, some of my clients like resonate really well with functional medicine. Like it shifted so much for them. And I
Mm,
mean, I do have a few, like just being frank, where like we don't really get anywhere with remedies.
mm.
Like if you're just doing homeopathy, like sometimes the case just needs a little bit more. So I think it does depend. This is just my personal belief, like where
Yeah.
I guess like the resonance of your soul is at, right? Like what is your soul desiring? I don't know. That's just my belief on it. But ultimately going back to, what you were saying, Vanessa, like the body does heal itself. And so I've always had that innate belief. So when anything would happen with me, I mean, my mom definitely didn't rush us. Like she was not a part of the medical model. So for sure that helped create and just reinstill that belief for me. But like, it's fine. Like the body's working for you. So if you can just give it the space to do what it's trying to do, like it's not going to self destruct. Right. So because I have that thought, like when, I mean, just a personal example, like I've been through the ringer like this past few months with like hormonal stuff. And like for the first time, I like bled for like a month, like on my period. And I
Whoa.
think a lot of people would be like, what the fuck? Like you just let yourself do that. And I'm like, yeah, because you know what? My periods have been phenomenal since then. Like
Mm,
phenomenal. Like no
Yeah.
pain. Yeah, no PMS symptoms, like
yeah.
normal flow, like 3 to 4, like have been amazing. Like my bloating has gone down, my sex drive is back up. But it's like if you interfere with that process,
Mm.
there's a good chance you're not going to experience all the growth that's right on the other side of all that resistance that's coming up for you.
I always think of like aggravations and ameliorations, like the light, the dark, and then the light. It's
Exactly.
the yin, it's the yang, it's
Yep.
it's the up and the down. It's all what goes up must come down. It's all the same thing, right? It's just that's the balance of life, and it's like you have to go through it, to just get to the other side, and and then you have, that's the whole point of homeopathy, like
It is. Yeah, it totally is. And I think too, so I was actually taking syphilinum
Mm,
probably like every other day. That's been a phenomenal remedy for me mentally, emotionally, like spiritually too. And I'm very, like I said, I can feel a lot with my body. So like I took that dose and I was like, oh, this is about to fuck something up. It is about to tear me apart. Like I just felt it. So then I stopped. I didn't take more. And then yeah, I had the wild period after that. So
yeah. Well, that's a deep acting nosode for people who don't know. So
very deep.
it's going to be a deep acting remedy, and yeah, a layer that probably everybody in the world needs. So,
Totally. Totally.
What
Yeah.
did you take, Ashley?
Probably like a 50 M.
whoa, you are a little bit of a badass.
Yeah, I'm definitely a rebel. I'm like, let me just take this and see what happens. Cause
Yeah.
like like I said, I know the body is always going to come back into balance. So it's not like,
Yeah.
taking a pharmaceutical that's like permanently altering like my physiology. It's like if it's an aggravation, the body is going to work it out and it's going to come right back to exactly where it needs to be. So that's why I don't really fear the higher potencies or
And
anything.
the better place that your body's going to be in after that.
Exactly. After, like, yeah, I've never felt so just good, like just vital after that. Right. Because it's, that healing crisis. And then you just feel so much better after. And that's part of the work that I do with working with the moms because they have a hard time holding space for their child to have that aggravation.
Yeah.
Like a few of the moms are like always like, they have this, they have that. What remedy can we give for this, for that, for this, for that? I'm like, that's just not, it's not how it works.
We have to work through it. We can't, and then people do, they want to treat the aggravation. And I'm like, well, you can't treat the aggravation. We have to like, let it work, the body work through, because if I treat the aggravation, I've just stopped the healing. I just did exactly what I would have done if I would have taken the Tylenol. I'm like, oh, never mind. We're going to stop that. And we're going to do something else. So.
I agree. I totally agree. And that's another reasons why I bring in breath work. Cause it's like, if we can just get mom a little bit calmer, she's not going to essentially be, worried and, for lack of a better term, like freaking out that her child is experiencing all these symptoms, right? It's like, this is supposed to happen. It's all good. Everything's going to get better. But that's just another reason why I incorporate that in, because it just complements the whole process so beautifully.
Yeah.
It's
awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks. Oh, I mean, I could talk to you probably for 2 days and I'd just still be getting started here, right? But actually, I want to know, like, where do you see yourself in the future? What visions do you have for what you want to manifest?
Ooh, that is such a juicy question, Heather. I love it. Okay, so what's been in my realm lately is in-person like retreats and almost like kind of what we're talking about, just like teaching, like this is the way. This is how. And there's plenty of different ways. This is obviously just a way that works for me. It feels really in alignment to like share in a community space with people that are desiring more, right? People that are desiring more outside of the medical model. I have my membership. It's called the Remedy Revolution. But what I'm really trying to emphasize is like helping parents like break free of that Western medical matrix. Like really disconnecting from that, because you have been so infiltrated with point blank, like false information, like completely false, because they have to run a business, they have to make money, and it's very genius the way that they have it all set up. But once you can disconnect from that, I really believe that that's when you just like reclaim all of you, like reclaim autonomy, like reclaim almost like your soul's essence. And I just think when you're more connected to that, like I said, life is just better. And speaking from personal experience, like that's why I do the work that I do in the way that I do, because everything that I do for my community, like I've done for myself. And I'm at a point where like my life is just so desirable and like so juicy. And a few years ago, I wouldn't have said the same thing. Like life sucked. Like I wasn't attracting in good partners. Like I wasn't working in a place that felt in alignment. Like didn't have good relationships with people. Like just nothing was in flow. So getting back to what you're asking, Heather. So that's a big piece, retreats. Me and a very dear friend of mine, I met her in breathwork training. We are actually facilitating a retreat together at the end of October, beginning of November. Not the way that I just told you that I see it, but that is in the future for me specifically. But it's a women's retreat and it's called Reclaiming Your Roots. So just reclaiming all of you. And we're incorporating a bunch of different practices in there. Breathwork, obviously, because we're both breathwork facilitators. But I really feel passionate about, like holding in-person retreats specifically for women, for moms specifically, because I think there's a lack of community like with moms and specifically just that like sacred sisterhood, like that's been so transformational in my healing journey, like trusting women and like trusting another woman to like guide me in like a healing. I'm literally getting goosebumps because like the woman that her name's Victoria, like I said, we met and her and I are very connected and she's been my personal facilitator. And like, I trust her so much, but it took like 10 sessions, maybe even 11 or 12 before I like surrendered and allowed her to guide me, like allowed her to just hold space, allow me to feel safe, like in her presence. So that's a big mission for both of us. But for me specifically, like creating in-person experiences, women can learn beyond the allopathic way of doing things. And I think along that process, you just learn about yourself too. Cause it's like, oh, this is actually how I like want to show up. Like, this is exactly how I want to like be a mom. Like, this is the health choices I want to make for my children. Like, this just feels more in alignment. So essentially creating spaces for women to know what they don't know yet.
Yeah, love it. So
Yeah.
good.
I love it. I love it. And I love that community, that connection, that support, and women supporting each other and holding space for each other. It's like so needed. They're always like, we're all on our own like island. I mean, I know I felt that for so, so long. And it's like, yeah, it's huge. It's been really helpful for me. So that's beautiful. Where are you located? Where will that be held?
Yeah, well, I'm currently in the Chicagoland area. I will never hold a retreat here because Chicago sucks. The energy is just like really gross. It's really heavy. It's really dense. I definitely need to move. Just kind of waiting on my partner. He's a chiropractor, so he has a physical practice here. So the retreat that we're doing at the end of October is in Sedona. Like the
Ooh.
energy there is wild. We visited a few weeks ago just to like scope out the area, like places that we want to take. The oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Take essentially the women too that are signing up for our retreat. Taking them there, experiencing like essentially like the healing frequencies like of Mother Earth. So Sedona is happening. Hawaii, Bali, Peru are like on our list too. So
Ooh,
yeah, we'll see.
awesome.
I'm all about just finding the most like energetically potent places because yes, I do think this is like somewhat of a game simulated reality, but like Mother Earth is like literally here for a reason. Like following the laws of nature are going to get you, in my opinion, the most vital, the most thriving. So it's like, why aren't we utilizing like what's been put here for us?
Yes, very well said. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's use the earth. Let's use the medicine, the herbs. I mean, homeopathy is all made from the
Nature.
earth, essentially. Yeah, like it literally is.
Literally nature's medicine kid.
Literally, yeah. So just creating spaces for people to experience that, I think feels really in alignment for me.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. Sounds all like amazing stuff. Well,
Yeah.
this has been an incredible conversation. Like I said, Heather said before, I could chat with you for days on end. And, well, you have to tell people where they can find you and know about you and everything. So please share.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. I've appreciated the time. So probably the easiest way to get in contact with me is on Instagram. That's the platform that I use the most. So it's the Breathwork Homeopath, the period Breathwork period Homeopath. My business is called Evolve Homeopathy, but I think we have to evolve out of that and change the name a little bit because I just do more than just homeopathy. But yeah, it's evolvehomeopathy.com. I offer like free clarity calls to initiate care, just to explore if it would be a fit for us to work together. It's got to be an energetic fit for you and for me as well. So those are completely free. So if that feels in alignment to start something up, you can access me there. I think those are the two most, yeah, that's probably the easiest way to get in contact with me. I'm just trying to think because like I have so many different offers and so many different things, but that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me and just explore more of what I create and what I have to offer.
Perfect. And is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to share? Or did we hit everything?
I feel like we can keep going and going. We'll cut it there. And if y'all want me back, I'd be happy to do that. But if I bring up something else, we're going to go down a whole nother rabbit hole, I think.
All right. Yeah. So perfect. Well, then thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. And yeah, you're a blast to chat with, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you. You ladies too. I appreciate both of you. Love your energy. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Awesome.